Well, I just lost a bunch of brain cells watching the Joe Rogan podcast because he had Elon back on and they dropped a bunch of new Cybertruck info that, of course, I gotta talk about. It went a little bit something like this. Mass production is very hard. I cannot emphasize this enough. It's extremely hard. It's 1,000%. It's actually 10,000% harder. It's super hard. It's very hard.
Did you know Henry Ford made hemp cars?
So you gotta sift through a lot of that information to get to the real interesting stuff in the middle, but Elon kind of dropped the Cybertruck weight on us. He said depending on which trim you get, it ranges somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 pounds. Now, a lot of people on Twitter were immediately jumping to, oh, that means the Cybertruck weighs at the high end 7,000 pounds. Like, I don't think it's that specific, but what it does tell us is that Tesla has probably designed, in my opinion, two different variants of the Cybertruck. Like, if he's talking about the weights in regards to, oh, the trims could be between 6,000 and 7,000 pounds, but his gut instinct when Joe asked him, like, what's the weight of the Cybertruck was just 7,000 off the top of his head. That makes me believe more in the NHTSA documents that Tesla will be building a dual motor and a tri-motor, and of course the tri-motor would probably be prioritizing a higher range, and Elon doubled down on the idea that the tri-motor is going to be targeting a 0 to 60 time in less than 3 seconds, which is just absurd. Currently, like, the fastest accelerating pickup truck would be the Rivian R1T, and that does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat with 4 motors, so if the Cybertruck can undercut that with 3, and it's also way larger, that's honestly just kind of amazing and impressive. But what I think it's most likely pointing to is the higher weight Cybertruck having a much bigger battery pack, which points to the idea that we could be looking at a higher range number. Hopefully they stay true to that original comment of plus 500 miles, but honestly, if you were hoping for any evidence that the Cybertruck is going to go over 500 miles on a charge, this podcast was not a great way to find that out, because when Joe was asking Elon when they were going to figure out better range and lower weights and all that stuff, Elon was basically doubling down on the concept of, you don't need that much range. As long as you can go somewhere between 300 and 400 miles, you'll be totally fine, because most people need to stop on road trips after 3 hours anyway. I wish he could have commented that, yeah, like, the Cybertruck range numbers are going to be as good as we originally thought or better, but yeah, I also don't think it can be understated that getting a large, inefficient vehicle like the Cybertruck to go over 500 miles on a charge, it's no easy feat. I don't think there's some quick aerodynamic fix to that, although Tesla probably is playing around with things. There's been some sightings, of course, lately. There's just way too many Cybertruck sightings to count at this point, but the only ones that I wanted to highlight for you today are ones that kind of stood out to me as a bit more interesting. Like, someone was working at a drive-thru, I think in Florida, and the Cybertruck pulled through and it didn't have side view mirrors on it, even though it was a released candidate build, and it looks, natural. Like the original prototype, it did not have mirrors, so that got me thinking that, okay, maybe Tesla is doubling down on making sure that the Cybertruck side mirrors can be easily removed. I hope there's some kind of software in the Cybertruck to account for that. Like, personally, with the camera icon in Teslas, they put the backup camera really big at the top, but the 2 repeater cameras down below. I would like the option in all Teslas, but especially the Cybertruck, to flip that around. Like, the backup camera should get bigger when you're in reverse, but if you're just on the freeway and you want to look around the vehicle and not have to turn on your blinker to see who's in your blind spot, because sometimes it's just helpful to know if there's something there, I would like those repeater cameras to be moved towards the top. I don't know, this might be wishful thinking, but I think a lot of people might need some getting used to when it comes to Cybertrucks without side view mirrors. Also, make sure you check with your state guidelines, because it is not necessarily legal in every single state to remove your side view mirrors. It depends on which part of the country you're in, but if Tesla is trying to squeeze out a few extra miles of EPA estimated range, then toying around with removing a few things like that might actually make a pretty big difference. There was also recently a sighting of the Cybertruck out in the wild, and it didn't have its giant cyber wiper, which someone has actually measured recently and said that the cyber wiper is a singular blade, which is 10 inches longer than the current longest blade option on the market. So Tesla's gonna have to start selling and servicing specialized wiper blades specifically for the Cybertruck, because there's no aftermarket one that would fit it right now, which is kind of hilarious, but I don't know, might be evidence that Tesla is targeting 500 miles, but it might not be much more than 500, based on the previous gross vehicle weight ratios we got in government NHTSA documents. A lot of us were suspecting the Cybertruck would be around 6,500. Elon has now kind of alluded to the concept of it being over 7,000 pounds now, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. Bad case scenario, it means that it's going to be very heavy, so the range and efficiency quality of this truck is not going to be great. I know a lot of people that were kind of comparing it to the Tesla Model X were hoping that the Cybertruck, thanks to its exoskeleton and structural battery pack and the cyber cells, was actually going to be lighter than a Plaid Model X and therefore get similar efficiency because it's a larger vehicle. They thought it could offset that with the weight savings. But Elon saying that it's around 7,000 pounds kind of squashes that theory, in my opinion. It supports the concept that yes, the Cybertruck is going to have a massive battery pack, and yes, with its higher voltage architecture, it should be fairly efficient for the size, but that does not necessarily mean that it's going to be light. He also mentioned that the ground clearance of the Cybertruck should be the best of any vehicle out there, which is good news. They've also been testing the Cybertruck off-road a lot. We've been seeing what it looks like with its suspension maxed out. Looks kind of hilarious and ridiculous to me, but I love it. That's kind of what the Cybertruck lives for. Yeah, my biggest concern when it comes to the off-roading and the ground clearance is really just that giant black, like, I don't know, structure underneath the back bumper. That definitely doesn't look like it's going to be a good departure angle, but maybe Tesla's solution to have a crazy high suspension system, which it feels like in a lot of these testing videos, that's what it's going to have. You know, the original prototype showcased that fairly well, and I think it's going to be the case with the production model as well, which is why, personally, I think this vehicle has so many bells and whistles for a Tesla, that is, and there's so much crazy high demand for it. You know, Elon was bragging about how at the delivery event, which is in less than a month, that's kind of exciting, they're gonna show videos of them shooting it with a 9mm handgun, a 45, and a shotgun, and showcase how there's no penetration to the exterior. The glass is not bulletproof, he reassured us on that, but so much durability, so much new tech all going into one vehicle. Yeah, personally, I think if it's Tesla's best product, it makes sense for it to be expensive, at least at first. Tesla will always price their vehicles, in my opinion, according to demand and supply, and early on, demand's gonna be crazy high, so I expect the price to be crazy high, and then as they catch up on demand with those high prices, they will lower them, bringing in more and more people to the Cybertruck as they scale up production so that they can secure their thick margins. That's just the way they've priced it in the past. That's how I expect for them to price the Cybertruck. So try to set your expectations with the concept that if you want an early VIN Cybertruck, like if you want a Cybertruck within the next 6 months, it's probably going to be super duper expensive. But if you're willing to wait a year or two, Tesla will probably lower the Cybertruck pricing and will have better margins than pretty much any other automaker. Ford and GM particularly are having a very hard time organizing deals with unions, and that's eating into their already not so great margins on their electric trucks. Rivian is also an amazing startup company, but still very much during that cash burn phase, and I don't think they're even really planning on making a profit with the R1 vehicles, which means that the pricing on the R1 isn't really going to come down much lower than what it is currently. Tesla, though, they've got more experience than anyone with mass producing electric vehicles and making sure that they're profitable, so it's going to take a while before Tesla can turn a profit on the Cybertruck. Given enough time, the Cybertruck will probably be able to undercut everybody, just not at launch. So what do you guys think of Elon's comments about the Cybertruck weight, the acceleration, the beast mode as he calls it, as well as the off-road testing, the no mirrors testing? Are you taking your mirrors on or off? What makes the most amount of sense for you? And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.